Berlin was the epicenter, the place where all the world's powers seemed to fight over. So if you look at the wars, the Napoleonic Wars, it begins and ends oftentimes at Berlin. If you look on into World War II, the great conflicts of the 20th century begin and end in Berlin. So there's a dark tourism, there is an events tourism, and it's also this vibrant emerging city that's trying to get its divided half, the former East German part of Berlin, up to the standards of that its West German half, or brother or twin, has grown up to have as one of the leading cities of one of the wealthiest nations in the world. So there's probably no better laboratory on some level than Berlin for understanding or studying sports, hospitality, and tourism as they come together to create one of the modern global capitals. And what's also kind of interesting from a policy standpoint or just a structural standpoint, that the Germany that Berlin is capital of right now, the capital of the reunified Germany, only came into being approximately 22 or 23 years ago.
Prague is known as a second-tier city, and as a result, it's very maneuverable, you're manageable, you can walk around, you get a sense of the city. In a week, you really can feel like you've had a sense of the city. You've been to some of the museums, you've done a lot of the sporting arenas, you've seen the major tourism sites, you've seen Prague Castle, you've been to some really interesting hotels. Berlin is a huge city. It is also the capital city of Germany, which makes a very big difference. So we're now in a Tier 1 city, not a Tier 2 city.
They will be looking at all the sites associated with the 1936 Olympics, how those buildings were used, and how they're currently being used today. For the students studying hotel management and hospitality, customer relationship management, they're going to be going around and looking at all the different hotels that have emerged in the last 20 years. And also the whole field of learning how to treat the customer, because with East Berlin, there were not any visitors, so they've had to relearn that whole side of their culture. And for the tourism students, they'll be looking again at what happened historically there under the leadership of during the Nazi years, how people were suppressed, how the city was divided, what sort of monuments are still emerging, and at the same time they're also going to be looking at the current leaders that are in Berlin and their emphasis on sustainable tourism and green tourism. So students will be working on projects related to that.
Well, I hope students gain from this experience in Berlin a couple of wonderful things. I hope they get to see the Olympic Stadium and how different and special it is. It's the home of the 1936 Olympics, and it's remained in use ever since Jesse Owens ran on that track, right now through to today, when in 2006 it hosted the World Cup in men's soccer. In 2009 it hosted Usain Bolt setting the world records in the 100 and 200 and relays. And then again, in 2011, when we were last in Berlin, it was where the kickoff for the Women's World Cup was taking place. It is one of the great venues in the world and one of the historic ones, and I hope students will get to see it. I hope students will get to get a sense of history for Berlin, see its convention center, see the extraordinary space that it has that it put together for hosting potentially bidding the 2000 Olympic Games, which it ultimately didn't win, but were ultimately a huge thing in setting the city apart, whether it's the O2 Arena, whether it's the Max Schmeling Hall, whether it's the Velodrome, whether it's part of the old East German infrastructure in the old eastern part of the city. So many wonderful things for students to see, so many unique things, and that's the best part of studying abroad. Anytime a student leaves the place that they're comfortable, even if they're not from New York, we all tend to look at our feet and don't use our mental muscles a whole lot. We travel paths that are familiar. And the minute you get outside that, you're out in the world where the language isn't the same, where the places are new, where the subway system is different, where everything is different, you start using parts of your brain to notice things even that you would step over at home. You notice them in a foreign country, and that's really the best part of foreign study.